I became popular in StarCraft Chapter 181-190. Thank you everyone for pressing like and follow. It's an encouragement for each other. I apologize for the translation. You can donate at Kasi Corn Bank 025-352-0310. Then let's start. Chapter 181 Hot Girl. She is a simple girl, full of life. Sexier than a dream, lonelier than the road. The world she lives in is burning with raging fire. Endless suffering is full, and she is unwilling to let it go, live. Under the bright blue sky, there is an endless yellow sand in the sky. In a corner of the desolate desert, a bright and hot heavy motorcycle is racing in the sand and dust, and the heavy drums played in the car stereo still echo in the vast wasteland. The motorcyclist is a hot-dressed girl. Her long hair is blown by the hot wind. And the orange sunglasses on the bridge of her nose sparkled in the sunlight. She wore tight denim shorts and a black bra, with two slender thighs straddling her sides, and the vast snow-white skin was enjoying the brief coolness brought by the top speed. Pink bubbles puffed up her cheeks and shrunk into her fiery red car. On her right shoulder was a silver double-barreled shotgun. Judging from its brand-new appearance, it didn't seem to be commonly used. It seemed that its owner carried it on his back as an accessory. Tapping the handle with her fingertips to the rhythm of the music, she lowered her head slightly and looked at the rearview mirror, spitting out bubbles. The sunglasses slid down the bridge of her nose, a pair of sly eyes reflected in the rearview mirror. I didn't take out much today. Forget about it. It's almost enough. Behind her car, more sand and dust rose into the sky, almost like a storm. That wasn't a moto effect. In the long sand and dust, a large black shadow shot up, chasing after the motorcycle at the same speed. She twisted the handle with her right hand hard, and the motorcycle began to accelerate. And the black shadow roared and followed closely. The yellow sand dispersed, and the ugly monster was exposed to the sunlight. It was a bunch of worms. There were about 10 of them in this group, and they looked similar. They all looked like 10-legged praying mantises. The towering limbs made them look like spiders that had been enlarged hundreds of times. The entire body of the Zerg was a disgusting flesh color, and its body was covered with fleshy thorns that protruded from it, which seemed to still be oozing pus. Hundreds of worm legs walked on the desolate ground, and the sound of the rain was like a war drum. After running in a straight line for a few minutes, the motorcycle driven by the woman suddenly turned a corner and headed towards a dirt slope not far away. Under the enormous kinetic energy, the motorcycle rushed up the slope and flew into the air. At this moment, the song also reached its climax. This woman is invincible. This woman is insurmountable. She walked through the raging fire. Bright and shining. On the fiery red motorcycle that jumped the woman, the corners of his mouth lifted up. And he snapped his fingers with his raised left hand. A bomb rang out behind them, countless mines were ambushed underground and all exploded at this moment. Some of the Zergs wanted to escape, but a strange arc of light lit up on the ground, blocking their way. Gunpowder smoke and waves of fire rose into the sky, all the terrifying Zergs became food for the bombs, and their broken stumps and legs were blown away by the strong wind. The woman casually spit out the gum in her mouth, whistled proudly, and a whistle sounded. With a wave of his hand, 5 or 6 gray and white robots appeared out of thin air. They spun their small-wheeled mechanical legs and ran into the corpses all over the ground, spreading out their spiral-patterned spring arms, and rummaged through the broken corpses. While the group of little robots were busy, the woman felt a vibration at her waist, and her mobile phone rang. She temporarily turned off the music, and when she saw the caller's name on the screen, she had a happy expression on her face. And she picked up the phone without hesitation. "Sister, have you passed this level yet? It's much easier than I thought." A beautiful woman's voice came from the other end of the line. "Don't mention it, I found something strange here after I succeeded. You should come and take a look." "Sister, when will you?" "No. It's a secret, so it's a good thing." The young woman smiled, showing her white teeth in the sunlight. "You're smart." The elder sister scolded with a smile. "Come here first." "Okay, I'll find you when I sell this set." The woman was Chu Yao, and Bai Yujian was calling her. Today is January 10th, 1972 according to the celestial calendar, the third year of the insect era. 3 years have passed since the insect swarm outbreak. 3 years ago, the people of Ling Yuan Star who were struggling to survive amidst the chaos of the insects did not wait for reinforcements from the Yalai Company, but waited for a protracted war. The war lasted for 3 whole months and ended with the defeat of K. Yun, the chairman of Yalai Corporation. As the winner, Steel Dome Company became the new owner of Ling Yuan Star. Steel Dome's solution to the insect swarm was simple and crude. They used dozens of high-yield nuclear bombs modified by magic stones. This kind of magic nuclear weapon that destroyed the country could greatly reduce the impact of radiation, which might be the little remaining benevolence of Steel Dome Corporation. The results were astonishing. Although the insect swarm crisis was not completely solved, the number of Zerg had been reduced to a controllable level. However, it left behind countless evil effects. The reduction of radiation was just to protect the resources. These war-crazed people did not care about human life at all. Hundreds of millions of people were buried in the mushroom cloud of the nuclear explosion along with the Zerg. These bombs fell both on land and at sea, leaving behind only scorched earth. Chu Yao and the others were lucky. The third continent had a special status on Ling Yuan planet, because there were branches of various interstellar companies stationed there. In order to not be the target of public criticism, the Steel Dome Company took relatively drastic measures here. Zindu and Liberty City were more affected by the light. But other places were not so lucky. The southern part of the first continent and the western part of the third continent were all turned into barren lands under the influence of the nuclear weapons of mass destruction. The worst thing was the second continent. Except for a few cities in the central region, the rest were reduced to ruins. The heat from the atomic bomb explosion evaporated a large amount of seawater. The sea level dropped. The land area continued to expand. The distance between the second continent and the third continent shrank, and a strait formed between the bordering lands. The effects of war and nuclear weapons, coupled with the subsequent resource exploitation by the Steel Dome, had caused the desert on Ling Yuan planet to become more severe. In addition to the small towns that were not damaged, there were also many deserts and wastelands. After the little robot finished his work, Chu Yao put the demon pills into his storage bag, then took out a large bag and filled it with all the valuable materials that he had collected from the insect carcasses. Tied the mouth of the bag tightly with hemp rope, Chu Yao tied the bag tightly to the back seat, and got on the motorcycle again. The music sounded again, along with the engine and the blowing sand, and the accelerating locomotive was like a burning meteor, galloping in the barren desert. After about 20 minutes, some white protrusions appeared at the end of the desert, and a slightly rugged tent could be seen. I became popular in StarCraft. Chapter 182 The Queen of the Wasteland. Groups of white tents were connected and placed under the high and low mountains. This small village was called Lenghu Town. The origin of the name was that a small lake several hundred meters wide behind the dwarf mountain was probably the only blue color visible in a radius of several hundred kilometers except for the sky. Cold Lake Town was founded by refugees on the ruins, located in the westernmost part of the third continent. The closer you got, the more ruins you could see. The broken and rotten reinforced concrete was simply repaired and became the walls of Cold Lake Town that could withstand the sandstorm. Chu Yao stepped on the brakes tightly, and the motorcycle started to slow down, driving slowly among the white tents of various sizes. It was said that they were tents, but in fact, most of them were white cloth wrapped with tattered logs. The corners of some tents were set up on broken electric poles, and the former glory of this place could be vaguely seen from the exposed wires. On the slightly narrow sidewalk, miscellaneous items were scattered outside in a mess: four-wheel off-road vehicles, a pile of broken computers, the dried bones of aliens, and various daily necessities. Chu Yao placed her body on the motorbike, walked through the forest of clothes to dry, and headed towards the depths of Linghu City with ease. The deeper they went, the louder the noise became. In addition to the human voices, there were all kinds of smells: sweat, alcohol, engine oil, disinfectant, and so on. Chu Yao could also smell the animal manure that came from a pig farm. Steel Dome's method of dealing with Ling Yuan stars could be simply summarized in 4 words: let them go. Except for the limited metropolis, the rest were outside the law. Therefore, there were many similar settlements in the desert, and they were all built brick by ordinary people who had survived the war. Regarding Steel Dome's oppression, there were certainly people who tried to resist, but not everyone had this idea, and ordinary people did not have this ability. After all the hardships and dangers and the rest of his life, people still had to live, and only when they lived could they have hope. Chu Yao carefully avoided the pile of garbage filled with insects and bugs, and finally found the destination of his journey. This tent stood taller than the others, like a spire jutting out of the white sea. Chu Yao stopped the motorcycle, tied it to a relatively complete lamp post with a lock, opened the curtain, and walked in with a sack slung over his shoulder. The large, spacious tent was filled with people. Men and women in skimpy clothing sat around 2 or 3 wooden tables, holding wine glasses in their hands, talking and chatting endlessly. Some of these people were merchants, some were hired, and some were ordinary people, their cheeks flushed from drinking, punching cards, playing cards, talking loudly, and laughing vulgarly from time to time. When they saw Chu Yao coming from outside, many people at the wine table waved at her. It seemed that she was very famous here. With a smile on the corner of Chu Yao's mouth, she nodded to these people one by one, and went to the innermost bar with a calm expression. Sitting in front of the bar was a big, bald man without a shirt. When he saw Chu Yao approaching, he stood up early with a smile on his face. "Mr. Chu, what would you like to drink today?" "The same old wee cocktail." "I won't drink wine today." Chu Yao turned her arm, and the large sack on her shoulder fell down on the bar with a loud bang. "Count down, down." The bald man unbuttoned the bag, revealing a pile of strange animal limbs inside. He arranged the valuable materials and laid them out on the ground, one by one. Every time he took out one, a smile on his face. His face also became bigger. Several troublemakers had already come to the two of them, and they came to the side with wine glasses, counting their limbs and bald heads. This is the compound eyes of grasshoppers. There are so many, it seems there are more than 10 of them. The plainly dressed man stared at the materials all over the floor in surprise. "Who are these women? What's behind them?" "Hey, what did you say?" The drunken burly man nudged the man with his elbow. "Little brat, are you new? This is our queen of the wasteland. These dozens of flying insects were nothing. I still remember our little sister Chu carrying a stag beetle back last month. Oh, that scene was so beautiful. Such a big stag beetle, if it wasn't cut off outside, even the door would be closed, can't get in." The skinny man standing at the side added. "It's not the queen, just caught a few more insects." Chu Yao replied politely, but her chin was still raised triumphantly, which seemed like a great reward. "Big sister, no matter how many times I watch it, I still feel envious. Why do you think I can't get tanned? The sun is so hot, if you stand in the sun for a while, your skin will melt." A young woman in the crowd asked Chu Yao, "Comparing people to others is really annoying. Why don't you try our company's new sunscreen? I've used it for a long time." Chu Yao chatted with everyone in the inn skillfully. "Oh? This is a secret." The eyes of the young woman wearing a cowboy hat lit up. "Introduce me." "The company." The shocked man before was still shocked. Queen Chu's true identity, tell me, I'll scare you to death." "She's the president of Mao Yi Company." The thin man said with a proud face, as if he was an employee of Mao Yi Company. "The great popularity in the past few years." "The president of Mao Yi Company. It might be Chu Yao, the beautiful entrepreneur who got it." After introducing the sunscreen to the young woman, Chu Yao nodded towards bald. Not long after, there were more than 40 worm eggs in Chu Yao's hands. These insect eggs were really the devilish medicine of these insects. If they could find the devilish pill, others would be able to find it too. But ordinary people couldn't see the true value of these devilish pills. Therefore, they regarded it as a dead egg. There was also a market for these insect eggs, because it was found that the bullets made from this were much more powerful than ordinary metal bullets, and they were also toxic. Chu Yao drugged these demons with a smile on her face, and suddenly turned to face the people in the inn. "I am happy today, and all the drinks here today will be credited to my account." The crowd cheered with joy, slapped the table, and clapped their hands. The sound continued, and everyone raised their wine glasses to salute Chu Yao. Queen Chu, take your brothers and sisters to hunt Zerg together. We want to see the big scene. Next time. Chu Yao put down the sack and walked out of the tent amidst the laughter of the crowd. She took out her mobile phone to check the map, got on a motorcycle, and drove towards the eldest sister. I became popular in StarCraft. Chapter 183 Strange Man. Bai Yuejian's current location is a cave they built in the desert, and Chu Yao is rushing there. This time, the eldest sister's retreat is to practice the Heavenly Touch secret technique, not to promote the Golden Core. She had recovered the Golden Core last year, and now she is at the early stages of the Golden Core. Chu Yao was in the final stages of establishing a foundation. She had lingered in this realm for a long time, and had made many preparations for alchemy. The motorcycle spit out white smoke over the desert. Chu Yao turned on the music again, and it was still a familiar song. She shook her head and hummed. She took out a bottle of soda from her storage bag and was about to pour it into her mouth when she looked up and noticed something strange in front of her. It seemed that someone was flying. Chu Yao blinked and swept her gaze around with her spiritual sense. This was a thin old man with a goatee, standing holding a flying sword that released flames, and he was running forward desperately because something was chasing him behind him. What made Chu Yao curious was not only the flying sword that looked like a rocket skateboard under his feet, but also his attire. He was wearing a thick robe and cloth shoes, which looked very similar to an ancient celestial being. It was like something in an old costume movie. Chu Yao swept her gaze behind her with her divine sense, seeing a group of familiar people. These were a group of fierce-looking, hopeless people, naked from the top to the waist, wearing white masks with visors on their heads, and intricate tattoos resembling Zerg worms on their skin, waving their hands. Their name was the Bug Fire Cult. As the name suggested, this was a group of believers who believed in the Zerg. However, rather than calling them believers, it would be better to say that they were a group of bandits who robbed the land and cultists. The origins of these lunatics were varied, but most of them were people who had fallen into madness after surviving a war. They fanatically worshipped the Zerg, believing that the root of all pain came from the gods. Only by dedicating their lives and embracing the mother worm could they gain eternal peace. The insect fire cult's influence in the wasteland was not small, but Chu Yao only felt that this group of lunatics was puzzled. To be honest, they were just a group of bandits in the name of a sect, and their so-called teachings were nothing but the empty talk of these lunatics. The mother worms in their mouths had never cared about their believers. At this moment, the disciples of the Insect Fire sect were riding in 2 modified trucks. He stood out of the car and shouted at the victim in front of him. Oh! Take the old one with the rocket skateboard in front, I'll tear it to pieces and make a new pair of flying shoes. Look, he's really wearing a cloak, and he's wearing a cloak. On the wasteland, ha 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 ha, I'm really not afraid of rashes. For you, Mother Chong. For you, Mother Chong. Ah! These Konghua cultists screamed incoherently, which made people worry about their mental state. Just now, when you see it, let's record it. After all, these people are old rivals. With a twist of Chu Yao's wrist, the motorcycle rushed forward like a burning meteor. The loud noise attracted the attention of the 2 parties in front. When they saw the fiery red motorcycle and the woman holding 2 shotguns, the screams came from the truck again. Witch! It's a witch! Shoot! Shoot! Witch! Evil! Evil, the #1 enemy of my teachings, die! For the sake of the insect mother! For the sake of our destroyed stronghold! Witch! Must be executed! I will use her skin to make a mask! Chasing after the old man above the flying sword, the 2 modified trucks quickly turned on the flat ground and ran straight towards Chu Yao's direction. The wheels of these modified trucks were large and full of sharp thorns and iron barrels. From a distance, they looked like terrifying hedgehogs. Their shells were also decorated with the bones of various Zergs. God knows why these people who believed in Zergs would use what they believed in to decorate their cars. Kill! The crazy bugfire cultivators held machine guns in both hands and shot wildly at the red motorcycles not far away. Like the other protesters, some even threw bone sticks and rocks at Chu Yao. Chu Yao sighed. She didn't want to waste time with these lunatics. She stretched her right hand behind her back and held a double-barreled shotgun in her palm. She stretched her arms forward and made a shooting gesture. A purple cloud shot out of the air and hit the nearest cabin of the truck. This Zixia is the Zhuang sword. The shooting was just a cover-up. The old man wasn't far away, and she didn't want to expose him. After the Zhuang sword pierced through the firebug cultivator who was driving, it rushed into the truck without stopping, as if it had entered a no-man's land. Before they knew what was happening, the truck's fuel tank was on fire, and the explosion blew Chu Yao's hair to one side. The other cars did the same, and Chu Yao finished the fight in no time. No way, this group of people was too good. The difficulty alone could be many. The bugfire cult group spread out across the wasteland, comparable to the number of Zerg, and everyone was annoying. Under the cover of thick smoke, Chu Yao threw out a few small robots and asked them to see if there were any valuables left on the firebug cult's vehicle. The strange old man had not left yet. He stepped on the flying sword, panting non-stop, his eyes swollen, with an expression of life left after a disaster. He looked at Chu Yao who was sitting on the motorcycle, hesitating for a moment, and finally flew forward. The old man put down his car and bowed to Chu Yao. "Thank you, fellow Daoist, for your help. Old Daoist Qingxian is very grateful." Chu Yao looked at the old Daoist with a strange expression. "My surname is Chu Zhao. It's just a matter of saving your life. Don't worry about it." Looking at the old man's attire, Chu Yao was full of doubt. "Why do you call me fellow Daoist?" She didn't feel anything for this man at all. Spiritual power fluctuated. The skinny old man was just an ordinary man. The world is chaotic these days. Insect disasters are everywhere. All living beings are suffering and seeking. Even though you and I met by chance, we are also people who are in misery. But the way to seek is different. It can be said that we are all fellow beings of the world. The benefactor, Zhu Chu, is naturally worthy of being called fellow Daoist. The old man reached out to stroke his goatee as he spoke. "Looks like a Daoist grandmaster. Just you look like a liar." Seeing the flame iron flying sword in his hand, Chu Yao couldn't help but smile. Since leaving Feng Yuan, she hadn't seen someone who spoke like this for a long time. What fellow Daoist Qingxian said is true. Chu Yao deliberately teased him and bowed back with a clenched fist. "I just don't know which sect you're from? What kind of kung fu do you practice?" Hearing the question, old Daoist seemed to have become a different person immediately. He reached out to straighten his long robes and looked into the distance. "I'm poor. I have no talent. I am a supreme gate cultivator. I became popular in StarCraft. Chapter 184 Cyber Cultivation." Rampa's face was puzzled. "What kind of door?" "Tou gate." "What kind of door?" "The top gate." "Tou." "What? You and I are looking for different methods. It's fine if fellow Daoist Chu doesn't understand, and you don't have to force it." "What? Sorry, this is our sect's secret, and I have nothing to share." "Don't worry, fellow Daoist Qingxian, I was just wondering." Chu Yao's eyes flashed with a deep sly look. "You and I are the heavens." People were all aware of the thousands of years of grievances between immortals. Fellow Daoist Qingxian was so blatantly trying to imitate the way of the immortals, but he wasn't afraid of becoming the target of public criticism and being ridiculed by others. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Qingxian was a little anxious. "Seek the Dao. The Dao practiced by that pitiful Daoist can only be compared to Lao Shi's group with flying swords. Not to mention the others. The immortals they seek are invisible and illusory. The pitiful Taoist could see, you can see a real fairy that you can touch." Chu Yao's smiling face could not hold back any longer. "May I ask, what kind of fairy is Qingxian Taoist enshrined?" "He is the number one immortal in the 9 heavens and 10 earths, Quan Tianjun." "Huh?" Chu Yao did not know what expression to use to face the Taoist elder in front of him. "Heavenly quantum." "That's right. With the method of topology, the energy of alchemy techniques, and the fusion pill, bites are exchanged into blood, and the circuits become pulses." Speaking of joy, the Taoist elder shone brightly. Putting his hands on his chest, he drew a formula that Chu Yao did not know: get on the plane, and finally achieve the great path. Chu Yao was shocked. What cyber cultivator? Under Chu Yao's provocation, the Taoist elder really talked a lot, but Chu Yao became even more confused after hearing it. Do you want to be a robot? No, that's just a small step. As long as... The old man wanted to continue, but suddenly remembered that he seemed to have said too much, so he quickly shut his mouth. Fellow Daoist Chu, the poor Daoist has already revealed enough. You can understand the rest yourself. I know you're an idiot. Chu Yao finally lost interest in this old Daoist. In her mind, Qingxian was like a group of people from the insect fire sect, and there might be a knot in his head. She found a towel from the back of the motorcycle and wiped the dust on the motorcycle cover. Okay, then I'll be off. Take care of yourself. See you later. Chu Yao made a move to leave, but... The old man hesitated. He hesitated, as if he was hesitating to speak. She could tell immediately that old Daoist must have encountered some trouble. So she tilted her head and looked at him. Qingxian pursed his lips and finally took a deep breath and said, Dare to ask. How far is fellow Daoist Chu from here to Xindu? It turned out that he was going to Xindu. Don't you have a mobile phone? Chu Yao was puzzled. A phone, being chased by those bandits. More than 200 kilometers away from Xindu. Chu Yao glanced at the flying sword in the old Daoist's hand. Just use your fire iron sword, but I can do it. Don't fly over. It's still too far. How can I do this? King Xuan's eyebrows twitched into a ball. Where did you come from? How did you get into the Bugfire sect? It's a long story. Qingxian sighed. I was born in Wuchen, and this time I came here with a few close friends. For a small urgent matter, the car broke down on this wasteland. We were still waiting for rescue, but we ran into this group of barbarians again. So we had to run away. Wu Cheng, I have heard of Chu Yao. It was one of the few cities in the second continent that was not affected by nuclear weapons. When the war started, Dayan and Zhonglu brought the Tianyanmen they had found and hid it in Wuchen, and did not join the company until the fighting stopped. The wasteland is full of danger. What made you rush here when you don't even want to die? Chu Yao's heart was wary. Besides, the intercity flights were just opened a year ago. You guys? Aren't you going to fly? Fellow Daoist Chu, I don't know. The plane tickets are too expensive. The three of us, even a one-way ticket for one person in economy class is more expensive than the cost of gasoline. For a round trip. Qingxian showed a wry smile on his face. Puff, it turned out to be the case. The old man's eyes were full when he talked about cultivation, but he felt a little embarrassed when he mentioned the plane tickets. Seeing his rather embarrassed expression, it made Chu Yao think of the embarrassing years he had spent when he was still an ordinary cultivator, so he couldn't help but laugh for a moment. 3 pennies made the hero pause. I still have something to do now. If you want me to send you to Xindu, then your calculations are wrong. Hearing this, King Xuan's mood dropped slightly, but Chu Yao's next words made him lose his mind again. Come to his senses. But I can show you the way. Chu Yao changed the subject. I don't need money, as long as you tell me what urgent matter you're talking about. Qingxian pondered for a moment. Hesitating indefinitely. I want you to understand that this is a wasteland. Chu Yao stretched out her hand, and the small robot that was working not far away walked up to her. If I don't deal with these insect fanatics, do you think you will still be alive? Okay? That's all. I don't care if you get paid. King Xuan's eyes lit up, but in order to solve the immediate problem, he finally said. In that case, I will tell my fellow Daoists, but I must not tell others, because this may be the fate of the fairies that my generation of cultivators have dreamed of for many years. Chu Yao's face was like the old man on the subway was looking at his phone. You really dare to call yourself a monk? Fellow Daoist Chu also knows that since the chaos of the insects, the world has changed, and some of the secret treasures hidden in the mountains have reappeared in the world. To the point. Chu Yao was running out of patience. Yes, I twisted the throttle a few times. Down, down, down. The sound of the large engine startled Qingxian. It is said that on the Drunkard Peak to the east of the new capital, several hidden ancient fairy caves have appeared. And it is said that there are treasures left there by Quantum Tianjun. Antiques, that's what we came here for. Dong Fu? I'm afraid that even if it is a cave, it has nothing to do with the Quantum Heavenly Lord he spoke of. But this made Chu Yao a little interested. That's it. That's it. We don't know the details. It's not that far, we'll wait until we get there. Okay, then thank you fellow Daoist for the information. Chu Yao stretched out, her hand gracing the steep slope to the south, pointing at it. Did you see the shoulder of the mountain? Walk south for more than 10 minutes, and you will see a small mountain with a small lake below, which is easy to recognize. It is Lenghu City, and there is a bus to Zindu. Thank you fellow Daoist. Qing Xuan was overjoyed, bowed to Chu Yao again, and was about to activate the flying sword immediately. Wait a minute. Chu Yao took out a small sign from the back of the car and threw it to Qing Xuan. The latter took it and saw a cat's face with its tail extended. Qing Xuan thought the sign was familiar, but he couldn't remember where he saw it. Hold it and show it when you are in trouble. No one in Linghu City dares to bully you. You can also get a 30% discount on drinks. Although this old man was a little nervous, he didn't look like a bad person. The two met on a wasteland that was more or less destined. Just make good relations. Qing Xuan solemnly put the seal on his collar. Thank you Daoist Chu. The robots also disappeared. Qing Xuan didn't think there was anything wrong. He just thought that those robots might have some kind of light masking function. He stepped on the flying sword and rode his horse towards Linghu City. I became popular in StarCraft. Chapter 185 Raiki's Revival. Xiao Hua, help me find out what happened near Ziwiran Peak recently. Chu Yao sent a message to Su Hua while driving. Maoan's operations were now handed over to Xiao Huo, and Bai Jing was responsible for the normal operations of Mao Yi Company. Gong Xiaoran and Chen Qingye were relieved from their hard work. They had more important things to do. Okay. When Xiao Hua replied, Chu Yao had already arrived at a wide plain. This place didn't look like the others in the wasteland. It was all the same barren. Except for a few large rocks around it. Chu Yao waved his hand to the open space inside the rock and shot out an aura, and after receiving the response, he rode his motorcycle and drove in. As if breaking through the hidden clouds, low mountains appeared in the distorted and dim air. Halfway up the mountain, a 3-meter-high stone gate could be seen. A woman stood outside the stone gate and nodded at Chu Yao with a smile. The plain high-waisted dress on her body highlighted her height well, and the skirt dancing in the wind became a colorful touch in the desert. It was Senior Sister Bai. After she cultivated the secret method of the consciousness, her eyes seemed to have become much clearer. However, Bai Yujian's hair was dyed black like Chu Yao's, in order to avoid attracting too much attention. Chu Yao turned into a stream of purple light, jumped up, and arrived beside Bai Yujian in an instant. Congratulations, sister, for your great achievement. Chu Yao smiled and clenched her fists. Be happy too, I'm glad too. Bai Yujian clasped his fist with a smile on his face. Sister, how is your gathering of demonic medicine? There are 1,477 pills now. Chu Yao reported the precise number. Many. I want to wait until 1005 before planning to establish an alchemy. Chu Yao's current cultivation base was in the late stage of foundation establishment, and he was only one step away from Golden Core alchemy. Bai Yujian was in the early stage of Golden Core, and she had entered the Golden Core state last year. Hearing this, Bai Yujian nodded. Actually, 1,000 is enough, but you have to be in a safe place and I have no objection. Then what exactly did Senior Sister ask me to see? The technique is so powerful. The extent of my consciousness right now is comparable to the middle level of the Golden Core. Thanks to the miraculous effect of the Moon Appreciation Technique. It directly crossed the small realm. Chu Yao was surprised. Can I practice? Of course, it's better to say that I have the will. But I can only wait until I get the Golden Core. Chu Yao followed her sister and walked into the cave while chatting. When passing by the closed cottage, Chu Yao felt a wave of spiritual energy that was not weak. Isn't that the retreating Xiao Yu? How is she? She is preparing to set up a foundation. It's a pity that there are no foundation building pills, but with her potential, it's not a big problem. The two walked into the room. The hall and the inner room were not far away. There was a gust of spiritual wind in the room. Chu Yao took a breath and walked to the open inner room. The courtyard was filled with spiritual trees. They were planted in a 1-acre field, and they were growing happily. This was the spiritual field that Chu Yao had opened in the cave earlier. The swarm of insects not only brought chaos and panic, but also many opportunities, such as the return of the aura of heaven and earth. That's right, Ling Yuan Star's spiritual energy had recovered. Although the process was very slow. It might be because the large formation that sealed the Zerg had broken, or it might be because of the change in the environment. In short, this planet that had been ravaged by the weather was slowly recovering. People had to sigh at the great power of nature. Under the gathering of the eldest sister's spirit and Chu Yao's cultivation experience, these spirit plants grew and grew. Although there weren't many planted, with the help of Yao pills, Chu Yao was able to refine some medicines that had always been prepared for the journey, and these medicines were enough for the two of them. These barren stone vines are growing well. After half a month, I can use them to refine raw pills. The two checked the mental field for a while, then walked to the depths of the cave again. In the deepest resting room that Bai Yuejian saw, Chu Yao was surprised to see that there was a large hole opened on the ground, and there was a strong wind inside the hole. Chu Yao and his sister looked at each other, the other party nodded and jumped in together. A dark tunnel appeared, and Chu Yao's spiritual sense moved forward, but he could not see the end at all. The eldest sister cast a small spell, and a milky white crescent moon appeared above her head, and pure white light illuminated everything around her. Is this cave under the cave? Chu Yao asked, and her voice echoed off the stone walls. Could it be that a Zerg came out of it? That's right, but the Zerg inside, I cleaned it up. And it's clean. Seeing that Bai Yu took the lead and walked to the depths, Chu Yao followed closely behind. Compared to the barren wasteland, the humidity inside the cave was high. Some of the hanging milk rocks were covered with thin water marks, and the water droplets that dripped down would gather into pools on the ground. Along the way, Chu Yao saw the corpses of many ferocious Zerg. It was assumed that they were the Zerg that the eldest sister had cleaned up earlier. This walk took dozens of minutes, and Chu Yao's spiritual sense was limited, so he guessed from his feelings that they had left the confines of the hill and arrived deep underground. Sister, this scene is very familiar. Bai Yujian smiled knowingly. Yes, the last time was in the number 1 mine of Baishan Mine. In the blink of an eye, they had been in Ling Yuan Star for 5 years. 5 years for ordinary people, it was enough to turn a boy into a young man, and a young man into a man. For a monk, it was just a flick of a finger. This pit seems to be much deeper than that mine. Chu Yao's consciousness still couldn't reach the bottom. What's down there? Do you still remember the reason we chose here? To open the cave. Of course, I remember what you said back then, sister. The mountains and marshes are ventilated here, the winds and dragons gather, the veins of the earth are aligned with the constellations, and there is a hidden image of the treasure land. The so-called air replenishment is controlling qi. Bai Yu scolded with a smile. It seems that there is a reason for all this. The answer lies at our feet. If it weren't for the great achievement of the moon appreciation technique, with the initial Jindan spiritual consciousness, I wouldn't really have found out that there was something hidden under the cave. Sister, don't be a fool. I'm itching to sell. There is a spiritual spring hidden under here, right? I can't explain it in 1 or 2 words. After a while, you'll naturally know. After the two passed a corner, Chu Yao saw a faint light in the depths of the cave. Don't wait, we're here. Bai Yuejian placed the small moon above her head, and as she walked deeper, the light became more and more intense. After avoiding the remains of a large insect, the two arrived at a wide stone hall. There were continuous stone slabs on the ground, and the spiritual lights on the surrounding pillars were also flickering, illuminating the stone hall brightly. The huge stone door of the mysterious craftsmanship was embedded in the stone wall. I became popular in StarCraft. Chapter 186, Immortal Cave Mansion. In front of the huge stone door, a dim blue circle appeared. But Chu Yao's gaze did not stop at the strange door at this moment, but turned towards the stone wall to the west. The surrounding walls were carved with many images. Under the broken sky, there were all creatures with distorted expressions. There were immortals riding on clouds and mist to move mountains and seas, and there were warriors with golden arms and iron horses forming walls of flesh and blood. There were immortals and humans, but there were more terrifying monsters in the picture. These monsters crushed the sky, tore the earth, and tore rivers and seas apart. They came in groups and acted recklessly in the city of the human race. No matter where they went, not a single grass grew. Although there were slight differences in the details, Chu Yao could still tell from the bodies of those monsters that they were Zerg worms. Senior sister, this might be. Bai Yujian followed Chu Yao to look at this time, and the two thought together, as you think, this might be the record of the insect plague several years ago. It is a specific year. It is impossible to verify. It seems that we did not catch up with the natural disaster of this insect pest. It is not a coincidence. Chu Yao nodded and looked at the mural below. According to the description of the mural, after the insect plague, countless civilians were cut off first. Then the imperial officials and soldiers came out with swords, halberds, and long spears, but they did not last long, and the magnificent palace was destroyed overnight. Then, all the cultivators descended from the sky, holding magic mirrors and flying swords, fighting those insects to the death, but the situation was still not good. Corpses were everywhere, and the world was in mourning. In a desperate situation, there was finally an immortal who could ride on clouds and mist, with auras on their bodies and fairy catkins flying behind them. As soon as they appeared, they were worshipped by thousands of monks. These powerful monks moved mountains with their hands and filled the seas with their feet, almost omnipotent. They turned into gigantic giants as bright as the sun and moon, and fought desperately against the giant Zergs. The murals also showed three particularly powerful monks. A man in a Taoist robe holding a 3-foot-long green blade, radiating an aura around his body, calm and composed, an interesting woman. These three people were particularly striking among the great powers, like stars holding the moon. Unfortunately, there were no words on the mural, and the two of them could not remember the names of the three monks. There were still topics to follow here, and the murals that followed were rather abstract. These great monks had dealt with countless Zergs, and finally launched their final battle with the Zerg leader. But the leader of those Zergs had turned into a huge furry ball. It was just a ball of fur, without any other organs. I saw where the furry ball went, and the world turned upside down, and under its incredible power, thousands of monks turned into flying ashes. The sky shattered and the sea of stars trembled in this battle. It could be said to be exciting, but you could see it from the murals. At the critical moment, the three strongest monks turned into three beams of light, tearing the sky apart, and rushing into the starry sky with their furry balls. Then the remaining monks turned into beams of light, and finally turned into a huge formation, sealing the remaining Zergs into mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas. The mural ended here. Chu Yao took a rough look. And only half understood. Sister, is it possible that those large formations were transformed by the ancient priests? I don't know if there is such a technique. Bai Yujian thought about it. Perhaps this last mural is just an allegory, saying that the surviving priests worked hard to seal these Zergs again. It seems that the large fur ball is the mother of the Zerg. Chu Yao clicked and nodded. I just don't know if the three elders will succeed in the end. Could they become giants? What kind of Dao is this? There seems to be a record similar to Dao in it called Fa Tian Xiang Di, but it has been lost long ago. This kind of magic is not something a nascent soul can cast. The scroll next to this elder looks like an ancient world-destroying magic. Immortal treasure, so handsome, I want one too. You want everything. Bai Yujian complained quietly. Don't mention it. Before you came, I checked this door. Walked to the stone door covered in formations. The sound of footsteps echoed in the empty stone hall. This is not a seal formation, but a teleportation formation. Bai Yu saw a flash between her eyes. I tried a little, and found that there is a limit to this teleportation. Only people with nascent soul cultivation bases can enter. Sounds familiar. Chu Yao tilted his head. By the way, isn't the experimental secret realm our sect created for our disciples similar? It might be. That's right, this should be a similar secret place. Bai Yujian raised the corner of her mouth. Due to the lack of heaven and earth spiritual energy, this place has been quiet for a long time. I'm afraid that it will reappear in the world due to the recovery of spiritual energy in the past few years. I don't know if this cave is the remote ancestral land or left behind by the ancestors. In any case, this is our chance, sister. Girl. Chu Yao's eyes lit up. If there is a cave, there must be a secret treasure. It should be. There's no need to rush. This cave is in our hands, and no one can take it away. It's best to prepare yourself and go in to find out. Alright, I'll make a decision after I make the golden core. Chu Yutai prepared. She had been exhausted from hunting Zerg in the wasteland for a whole day, and she finally had a chance to show off her skills. Since everyone below Yuanying can enter, doesn't that mean there's a chance for Qi refining and foundation establishment cultivators? Chu Yao thought for a moment. When we find out the truth, maybe we can bring Xiao Yaoxi and Yu along. Hey, do you really miss them? This is my sister who only cares about herself. Day by day. Naturally, you'll miss everyone if there's something good. Chu Yao waved his hand. It's not too late. I'll find all the remaining demon medicine now, and I'll retreat tomorrow. Much faster. Chu Yao went to Lingqian to take care of Lingxi for a while, then went to check on Xiao's situation with her sister. Then rode a motorcycle to Lenghu City again. There were still more than 20 pills left before the deadline, and these demonic pills were still easy to find. Chu Yao only needed to use the equivalent amount of cash to go to the bald head to buy them. When she arrived in Lenghu City, she learned that a Taoist priest named Qing Xian had taken the latest bus to Xindu. He moved quickly. Ah, I forgot to tell my sister about this. Maybe there really is a cave on the Drunken Mountain. Chu Yao glanced at her phone, but Xiao Hua had not responded yet. She had been very busy recently. After collecting all the demonic pills, Chu Yao hurried back to the cave without stopping, cleaned up her room for a while, and started preparing to refine the pills. I became popular in StarCraft. Chapter 187 Retreat and Refine the Pills. In the quiet room that was 2 feet by 2 square meters, Chu Yao closed her eyes and sat cross-legged. A multicolored ring glowed around her. It was a magic circle that Bai Yuejian had prepared in advance, with various effects such as calming the nerves and gathering the soul, dispelling evil spirits, etc. In front of Chu Yao were 4 items, a storage bag, 2 small jade bottles containing medicine, a small bone shield, and a leather robe. Needless to say, the storage bag contained all the demonic medicines that Chu Yao had collected in the past 3 years. The 2 bottles of elixir were pre-refined and were used to help Jindan cross the calamity. The shield and the robe, these 2 items were high-grade magic weapons that Chu Yao had forged from the bones and fur of a Zerg. Countless, and used to resist the calamity of the heavens. According to previous experience, it would be better to have a peak tribulation pill. But it was obvious that it was not easy to find materials to refine tribulation pills on Ling Yuan star. The conditions were limited. These were the best that Chu Yao could prepare. The Golden Core Realm, which was the second hurdle of cultivation. Although it had been passed once, Chu Yao still had to be careful. The ancestors had the Yun Jindan Dao. If foundation building was the criterion of cultivation, then the golden elixir was the criterion of this road. Stepping into the golden elixir could be said to be a true rebirth and becoming a true fairy-like body. She sat quietly for a long time, and the spiritual energy in her body circulated throughout the sky, and her essence, energy, and spirit gradually filled up, and her aura gradually increased. As soon as the state reached its peak, Chu Yao's eyes opened immediately, like a sharp sword being drawn out of its sheath, ready to go. With a flick of a finger, 2 pills, 1 blue and 1 white, flew out of the 2 small jade bottles, and was held in Chu Yao's mouth. Mingling Ju was running, and the cold spiritual energy filled in his limbs and veins gathered at a point in his body. The spiritual wind in the quiet room swept like a hurricane, the aura of heaven and earth revolving around Chu Yao as the center. Bai Yu, who was guarding the law outside, saw her eyes move, and whispered to Xiao Ye who was waiting beside her, "It's started." It was a rare fortune for her to notice the golden elixir from such a close range, which was good for Xiao Ye's future cultivation, so Bai Yujian called her out of the shelter. The spiritual wind blowing into the quiet room was getting stronger and stronger, but the spiritual energy within it seemed to be depleted. Chu Yao's body seemed to have turned into a black hole, greedily devouring everything. The golden elixir could also be called the divine fetus. Gold is solid and indestructible. Elixir is pure, bright, and pure. Condensing golden pills is easy to say, but difficult to say. The easy part is that you only need to gather the spiritual energy you cultivate, but the difficulty is also at this level. Just relying on this pitiful aura of heaven and earth is not enough. The 2 bottles of longevity medicine she used up were all used up, so Chu Yao took out 2 more bottles and put them into her mouth. As soon as she waved her hand, hundreds of demonic pills shot out from her storage bag. These different shaped and colored demonic pills that were refined by spiritual fire floated in the air, turning into a stream of pills, swirling around her head. His mouth showed, a huge piece of spiritual fire covered the Dan River, and the densely packed demonic pills turned into bright light, which contained an astonishingly great spiritual power. With a wave of her hand, a river of spiritual energy rushed towards the spiritual platform in Chu Yao's body, and her body seemed to be covered in a layer of golden light. Chu Yao's eyebrows tightened, and her body trembled slightly due to the impact of the enormous spiritual power. This process was extremely painful. Although the pill in her mouth could reduce the pain by 2 times, she had to bear it alone. She could only endure it. At this moment, Chu Yao had to focus on the guidance of this enormous spiritual power. If he was the slightest bit careless, the consequences would be disastrous. Mingling Ju had already reached its peak. These spiritual powers flowed to the 3 channels in her body, then to the acupoints and meridians all over her body, and then back to the danshan again, transforming into the original spiritual power needed to produce pills, and repeating. Under the impact of the spiritual power, her limbs and bones seemed to be screaming, breaking, and sinking overwhelmingly. But Chu Yao knew that this was an unavoidable obstacle. Up until now, everything was easily under her control. There was a gust of wind in the quiet room. If the spiritual vortex just now was a wind, it could be called a storm now. A storm of spiritual power spread across the hillside. Lu Xiao's face was pale under the sweep of this enormous power. When she saw Bai Yu waving his hand to awaken the spiritual light, her complexion also improved slightly. In the danshan, above Lingtai, a whirlwind gradually condensed and formed, and a bright purple gold pill took shape. But there was a sudden change. At the side of the gradually condensing golden core, a black shadow appeared. Chu Yao's heart skipped a beat. What she didn't want to see was still happening. In fact, she had expected this kind of thing for a long time, because of the special characteristics of Mingling Ju. Before Chu Yao built the foundation, alchemy, and infant creation, they had all practiced the underground arts passed down from the masters. But Mingling Ju was created by her, combined with Kunling Ju. She still didn't know what changes would occur in this practice. And the changes were so sudden. There were no suspicious signs during Qi refining and foundation creation, but it happened at the critical point of pill creation. But Chu Yao didn't panic. Since he chose this path, he was destined to encounter such a calamity. She separated the stream of consciousness and explored the black shadow. It was about the size of a thumb. It was like a transformed wandering spirit. It seemed to have been born with a golden core. A wandering spirit? A fragment? A child? Chu Yao thought for a moment, but she had never heard of anyone performing alchemy with a ghost. She stared at the little brat with her spiritual sense for a long time. This thing had the appearance of an earth ghost, but it seemed to have the potential of a heavenly ghost, because Chu Yao felt a certain sense of consciousness. It came from it, but this kind of consciousness was as innocent as a newborn baby. It didn't seem to be dangerous, it just circled around the golden core, absorbing the scattered spiritual energy to strengthen itself. This kid looked very delicate, and Chu Yao felt that he didn't need to use any force, and it would immediately dissipate into thin air as soon as his spiritual sense was suppressed. Or just let it go. Since this little guy didn't pose much of a threat to him right now, it would be better to insert it into his body first. However, I have many ways to deal with it, maybe it's good for it to grow? Chu Yao felt relieved and devoted himself fully to the harmony and growth of Jindan. 3 days and 3 nights passed in the blink of an eye. The fluctuations of spiritual energy scattered outside became smaller and smaller, and the cave became much calmer. But Chu Yao knew that this was the calm before the storm. With the operation of the cultivation, the golden longevity pill had already taken shape. A round purple longevity pill the size of a thumb floated up and down with the breath in the danshan, shining brightly. The black shadow also became stronger, and Chu Yao felt that the two of them seemed to have a connection. As long as she had a thought, this little guy would swim around in her body. It was almost like other magical weapons that were born in her body, but this magical weapon was still alive. When the golden elixir was about to be completed, an indescribable pressure came from all directions, as if it wanted to crush it. The main task was coming. I became popular in StarCraft. Chapter 188 Golden Core Thunder Tribulation. Above the cave hidden in the dark cloud formation, a dark cloud formation formed in the bright sky. Suddenly, this black cloud appeared, and it was very violent. It covered hundreds of miles in an instant, covering the barren land in darkness. The sudden appearance of the black cloud surprised the people of Lenghu City, and they quickly took out various vessels to collect rainwater. In the wasteland, rain was rare. Everyone's face was suddenly lit by the dark clouds, and it was a day worth raising their glasses to drink. The dark clouds gathered and the air in the cave became more oppressive. Bai Yujian took Xiao Ye with her and moved a little further away from Chu Yao's quiet room. In the quiet room, Chu Yao no longer sat cross-legged, but stood up with a graceful posture as if she was facing a formidable enemy. 49 and 36, these were the number of thunder tribulations she had to survive. The journey of cultivation was to change fate with the sky. Only after breaking through the 36 thunder tribulations could one become a true golden core cultivator. If you couldn't break through, at least the pill would break and be repaired, and at worst, the body would die and the path would disappear, and years of hard work would melt away. There was no fear on Chu Yao's face. She had experienced 4 or 9 days of calamity, and now she had nothing more than to go through it. Above the sky, Jiayun was still taking shape, and with a dull thunder, a soundless and invisible thunder swept across the sky, over the thick stone wall, and struck Chu Yao as if appearing out of thin air. She was fearless in the face of danger, squeezing the magic formula with her hand, and the purple-red body protection aura flashed all over her body, and she received the thunder without any pain or itching. Golden Core Thunder Tribulation, that's it. Chu Yao showed a confident smile on his face. Here it comes again. Cut in front of Ling Guang with a large sound wave. One is stronger than one. On the 6th road, the aura began to tremble slightly. 7th, the mask began to shake violently. 8th, small cracks began to appear on the aura shield. On the 9th, these cracks began to grow larger, and the mask broke. The 10th thunder rang out, and the body protection aura that had collapsed exploded and shattered. Chu Yao still did not show any nervousness, her smile became even brighter. She vaguely remembered that when she was alchemy on Feng Yuan Star, her body protection aura would only last until the 5th thunder tribulation. The 11th lightning was about to come in front of him. Chu Yao waved his hand, and a small bone shield floated in front of him. And the devilish light flickered on the bones. She did not intend to use her body to possess, she needed to maintain her physical and spiritual strength later. The 7 tribulation lightning struck again, and the light shining on the small white bone armor gradually dimmed, like a small boat capsized and sank in a giant wave that was about to collapse. When the 19th attack came, the power of thunder and lightning seemed to have increased by several levels. After the sound, the small shield turned into dust under the lightning strike. Chu Yao wore a leather cloak on her body, and under the inspiration of the spiritual power, it seemed that there were ghosts and gods around her, covering it. This cloak only lasted 9 times. Under the relentless bombardment of the 27th lightning, it finally lost its effect. The last 9 left. Chu Yao took a deep breath, and in an instant, her body was floating in the air, her long hair fluttering in the wind. The Zhuang sword stood in front of him, and a purple shadow suddenly appeared. And the sword emitted light. Come here. The plundering clouds seemed to be forming, twisting, and swirling in the sky, creating a suffocating pressure like a mountain. The sound continued, this lightning bolt was finally invisible, but became matter, like a sharp golden blade descending from the sky, cutting through the gaps between the skies. The sky and the world. Chu Yao's body was filled with spiritual energy, and the sky was filled with purple clouds for a moment, and the Zhuang sword shot up in response to the thunder, turning into a 10-foot-tall giant sword and slashing the golden sword in the air. The wind was turbulent, and the lightning was overflowing. Unfortunately, the Zhuang sword could only defend twice. When the third golden lightning was caught, the sword began to tremble. Chu Yao knew that it was about to reach its limit, so she pulled it back into her body. The fourth set of golden lightning was already forming. Chu Yao fell to the ground, stepping back with her right foot. Dozens of ghosts came out from the ground, howling. Under her command, these wandering spirits gathered together and formed a huge shield to block them. Thunder flashed everywhere, and the ghost shield collapsed in a single strike. Chu Yao's body fell backwards as if he had been severely injured, and bloodshot eyes appeared at the corners of his mouth. She had no time to hesitate, because the fifth path was coming soon. The formula in her hand was changing rapidly. Hands were drawing circles to attract the sky and the earth, and the gates of ghosts and spirits appeared in the world. As the ghost gate formed, the fifth thunder rang out, and under the enormity, the ghost gate turned into a cloud of blue smoke and dissipated. Chu Yao's formula changed again, spiritual power poured out, and as the purple light flickered, a black square mirror floated in front of him. Oh! Bai Yuejian, who was carrying Xiao to protect the law not far away, was shocked. This was the first time she saw her sister use this trick. That black mirror was inspired by Yali's spaceship. As she expected, in an extremely dangerous situation, there would still be such a feeling. The dark mirror technique was obviously Chu Yao's method of suppressing prophets, but the thunder only stopped twice. Under the mad attack of the seventh thunder, the black mirror turned into fragments and shattered under the sky. Chu Yao looked quite embarrassed, her messy hair fluttering all over her head. And blood flowed out of the corner of her mouth in large quantities. Ji-yun felt more and more depressed, and the eighth thunder was like a golden dragon descending from heaven to punish Chu Yao. Under the golden dragon, Chu Yao's body looked very small. Lei Ting was too fast and restless. She didn't have time to cast spells to deal with it, so she attacked with her body. The intense pain came from all over her body, and the violent impact made Chu Yao feel that all the internal organs in his body were turning over and over, and he couldn't help but cry out in pain. A mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth, and his body fell to the ground with a bang. The ground was full of dust. The cry of pain made Lu Xiao's heart skip a beat, and Chu Yao's miserable situation made her not dare to look at it anymore. She looked at Bai Yuejian with a worried look, and squeezed the corner of her clothes. Master! Don't you want to help Chu Yao? Master! Bai Yuejian shook her head. The last 9 thunder tribulations must have been broken by herself. And it's useless for others to help. What else? A smile appeared on Bai Yuejian's face. Do you think she looks like she needs help? Hi! Lu Xiao followed the teacher's gaze towards Chu Yao's position. The sky was dark and there was no light. The most severe thunder calamity was brewing amidst the dark clouds covering the city. She supported herself to stand up. Her body was covered in blood. Her clothes were torn, and she was staggering in the wind as if someone would fall if she touched her. But she didn't fall. Her body looked distressed, but her eyes were the only thing that shone brightly. Shining brightly. Within Bai Yuejian's smile, there was a sigh, hope, and relief. This was her younger sister Chu Yao. Be strong, survive, don't be weaker than others. In front of her little sister, what was the tribulation from heaven? Under Bai Yuejian's satisfied gaze, Chu Yao made his last resort. The golden elixir that had just formed burst out from his body. Hanging in front of his body, along with a purple gold light that shook the earth. The last one. Chu Yao let out a long roar, teasing the boundless Ji-yun. Bring it on. I became popular in StarCraft. Chapter 189, Advance to the Golden Core. The Final Thunder. This could not be called lightning, but a golden pillar supporting the sky. This golden light penetrated the clouds and fell from the sky, covering Chu Yao and her golden core with electric light. Seeing her body about to turn into ashes in the golden light, Lu Xiao could not help but clench her fists tightly. The whole process took about 10 seconds. 10 seconds later, the golden light finally dissipated, the thunder stopped forming, and the dark clouds began to show signs of dissipating. Chu Yao stood on the peak of the mountain. Chu Yao's body was burnt black, and she could no longer recognize him as a human. When the master was crossing the calamity before, Lu Xiao had also protected the law not far away. But at that time, Master seemed to be working at ease, and he was not as embarrassed as Master Chu. Could it be that Uncle Chu's thunder tribation was much stronger than Master's? She was puzzled and was about to ask, when Bai Yujian answered her question. Little sister, you still have strength, otherwise, with the power of the Black Mirror, you can even withstand the final calamity, the spiritual power. Bai Yujian touched her chin, I guess you just want to try. The dark clouds slowly dispersed, and the bright sunlight returned to the ground. The townspeople in Lenghu city were all puzzled, what was this dark clouds, thunder, but how could there be no rain? But for them, this was just a boring part of life. No one would delve into it. Mostly, it would become a topic of conversation while drinking. Chu Yao seemed to still be standing there. Bai Yuejian and Xiao Ye did not move. They just waited quietly. After a few minutes, a shocking fluctuation of spiritual power swept through Chu Yao. This wave penetrated the clouds and shattered the rocks, and the wind blew everywhere. The earth shook, the blue clouds moved, and there were hidden Sanskrit, cranes, and music, as if heaven and earth were congratulating each other. Bai Yuejian smiled happily and flew towards Chu Yao with Xiao. Seeing her sister coming, Chu Yao stretched out her hand. The water rolled along her skin, then changed her clothes again, instantly turning back into a beauty from the wasteland. Congratulations to my sister for overcoming the calamity and being promoted to Jindan. Bai Yuejian smiled and clenched her fist. Congratulations to Uncle Chu for beating the calamity and getting promoted to Jindan. Lu Xiaoye followed suit. Hey, no manners, no manners. Chu Yao smiled and placed her hands on her hips, enjoying the two's congratulations. It's a pity that there were only two of them. I thought back to when I was promoted to Yuanying and Tianyan sect, the entire sect celebrated, and even hundreds of sects came to the court. Thinking of the grand scene back then, Chu Yao couldn't help but giggle a few times. Seeing Chu Yao like this, Bai Yu was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and smiled meaningfully, hitting her on purpose. Okay, don't be alarmed, this is the golden core, and you will be happy when you recover your nascent soul cultivation base. I understand, sister. Talking too much. I have to retreat for a few more days. You just broke through, you have to stabilize your cultivation base, it should be. Bai Yuejian nodded. Are you feeling unwell? You told me earlier that you were afraid that the soul of the underworld would come out. What accident? Now, is there any sign of an accident? No. A black shadow that was suspected of having intelligence appeared, and there really was no other accident. But whether that black shadow was an accident or not, Chu Yao still didn't know. She would study it carefully in a while. Chu Yao and the two said goodbye temporarily, and returned to the dark room in a blink. This was not teleportation, but a wall-piercing technique that had reached the level where magic moved with the heart. First, she sat down again and looked into her body. The Suanzijin Dan that was swirled by the thunder and lightning in the sea of qi in the Danshan was not only not damaged much, but its strength was even stronger than before. The powerful fluctuations of spiritual power made Chu Yao feel particularly at ease. The Zhuang sword and the black shadow slowly rotated around the golden core. Under the nourishment of the Jindan realm's spiritual power, Chu Yao could feel that Zhuangjian's old wound was healing rapidly, trembling with excitement as if he had returned to his hometown. Oh, it's true that I have returned to my hometown. After all, the Zhuang sword was her destiny talisman that was refined in the golden core realm. There were hidden wounds from the thunder on her body, but they were not serious. Chu Yao swallowed a few pills and immersed herself in the stability of her realm. This immersion was another 7 days. This promotion to Jindan took about 10 days. At noon 7 days later, Chu Yao, who had been silent for a long time, raised her eyebrows and slowly opened her eyes. She reached out to cover her chest. All the dissipated spiritual energy was withdrawn from her body, and the enormous mana power of the cultivation base appeared in her body. Chu Yao's body was covered in a black sticky layer, which was all kinds of dirt that had been removed from her body's meridians and bones when the realm was raised. Jindan, the second rebirth of a monk. Chu Yao washed her body in the same way and stood up. The powerful mana between her hand and foot wave made her satisfied. After working so hard, I finally regained the feeling of strength that I used to have. It was only a step away from Yuanying. Then, as she thought to herself, a black and purple shadow shot out from her body. This was the shadow that came with Dan. The black shadow was the size of a fist and looked like a wandering spirit. There were two small white dots on its head, which might be its eyes. The feeling was very strange. Chu Yao felt that it was like a part of her own body, but she had her own thoughts, but she still ignored it. This is me. Does Ji Dan have a child? Chu Yao stretched out her finger, and the black shadow obediently flew towards her finger. No, it was more like a spirit pet. She deliberately tried out this black shadow's ability. No matter what it was, whether it was a living person or a dead person, an ordinary wooden table or a solid wall, it could pass through it as if there was nothing there. And Chu Yao shared its vision. Whatever it saw, Chu Yao could also see it, as if it had a special sense of existence. With Chu Yao's spiritual power, the escape speed also increased, and the field of vision also widened. And it actually had a fluctuation of spiritual power, probably at the late foundation establishment stage. Chu Yao gave the order to attack the wall, and it floated above the wall obediently. I saw that its body suddenly burst into a purple light, and after the spiritual light flickered, an astonishing coldness erupted from its body, and the entire quiet room was instantly covered in ice, turning into an ice room. Chu Yao suddenly trembled, and after using one round of spiritual power, it relaxed a lot. This yin qi was strong on the outside and gentle on the inside. Not only could it produce ice, it seemed to be able to suppress even spiritual energy. Chu Yao's eyes lit up. Coupled with this little girl's ability to fly into the sky and escape from the ground, it was nothing better than using it to plot against others. I can't call you Black Shadow. Since you're covered in purple, I'll just call you Xiao Zi. Then, you'll follow me from now on. The clueless Xiao Zi circled in midair, looking very happy, returning to his body as Chu Yao ordered. Chu Yao felt a wave of spiritual energy coming from outside the door. It seemed that her eldest sister had discovered something unusual and sent a letter to inquire. She smiled, opened the door, and walked out. I've become popular in StarCraft. Chapter 190 Base. What were you doing just now? I felt a strong cold energy. It's fine. I'm just testing a small spell. Chu Yao changed the subject. Shall we explore that cave? Maybe. Yes, but don't you want to make more preparations? Chu Yao tilted his head and thought for a moment. Then I'll go to the base to have a look. I don't know if there's any progress on their new engine development. Okay. Bai Yuejian nodded. Xiao's preparations are almost the same. Seeing her like that, it seems like she's gotten some insights from your crossing the calamity. I'll set up a foundation for her to protect the law. The two were outside the cave. Chu Yao found her motorcycle parked on the side of the road outside the hill to bid farewell. Looking back, the cave was hidden in a formation again and disappeared into thin air. Chu Yao got on the locomotive and rode towards the opposite direction of Lenghu City. With her current cultivation base, the escape speed was much faster than driving an ordinary car, and she could be called a fairy of the land. But why waste spiritual energy when you can waste gas? And ride cool. Along the way, there was a signal tower approaching, and Chu Yao's cell phone finally had a signal. And she also got a reply from Xiao Hua. Some ancient relics were discovered near the Ziwiran Peak, but the place where the relics are located is currently controlled by an unknown small listed company. According to Mauen, this small company does not do any business at all. It is engaged in surface software research. For example, the rumors about the so-called immortal relics this time were spread by this small company, and the purpose is self-evident. In a word, this is a group of liars. Chu Yao hung up her phone. She had expected such a result. It is a pity that old deist Qing Xian and his friends were cheated at a young age and ran away here. But they were willing to fight and suffer, which was beyond Chu Yao's control. A fiery red motorcycle rode on Jueshan and sped along in a straight line impartially. The location of the basement should be in the northeast of the wasteland, not far from Xin City. I don't know if the new capital should be called the old capital. As time passed, a tall cement wall with no visible edges gradually appeared. Behind the tall wall were the tall buildings in Xindu. These tall buildings rose from the wasteland, and the connection between the city streets and the desert was severed, as if the pieces were chopped into pieces, and the knife was a seemingly endless wall. This wall was called the Sand Wall. Function as the name suggests, this was a specially constructed barrier made of iron domes to protect the city from the invasion of wind and sand. This barrier not only blocked the wind and sand, but also isolated people from each other. Those without a residence permit in the city were not allowed to pass through the sand barrier. Chu Yao did not fall into this category. As a famous entrepreneur, Steel Dome, who controlled Ling Yuan, had issued her a residence permit the day before the policy was released. However, she did not go there often these days unless necessary. In the current Xindu, survival was no easier than in the wasteland. Along a pitch-black wall dozens of meters high, 2 or 3 kilometers away from the city, a factory appeared in the wasteland. There were no other buildings around, except for a mess of rocks and dry plants that were unique to the desert. And it was a winding path that connected to the sand wall. Chu Yao rode a motorcycle and walked along the path until he reached the outside of the white wall of the factory. On the top of the tallest building in the factory, the cat head logo was slightly distorted in the hot air. She smiled and pointed at the young security guard standing guard by the door in the house, who immediately opened the door for her. Walking into the building, the machinery used to produce medicine was arranged in an orderly manner and was still in use. There were not many employees, and they were all busy with their own work, and they did not stop working because of Chu Yao's arrival. Chu Yao greeted the supervisor here and arrived at a hidden room. Swiping face, swiping card, and voice confirmation after passing through many checkpoints, Chu Yao finally arrived at the 3-story basement that did not exist in the factory. After taking the elevator and walking through a long corridor with pipes all over the walls, he encountered a large monster. Most of it was a frame made of steel bars, but judging from the overlapping structure, it looked like a giant ship. The completeness of this large ship was only 1/4, the rest was only a rough outline. However, it could be seen from the outline that it was more than a kilometer long. Under the empty space underground, this giant unfinished spaceship is placed on a 1-meter-high platform, surrounded by various equipment and computers. And countless people wearing cattail uniforms surrounded, bustling around. This was the secret base of the Mao Yi Company in the Third Continent, and there was another name that Chu Yao had given it, Mao Yi Refuge. One of the 4 giant ships had been completed, a large spaceship that had been secretly developed 3 years ago. All of this was done secretly under the noses of Steel Dome Corporation, because they did not allow the company to do this privately. This was an almost impossible task. After all, it was only a few kilometers away from Xindu. The guarantee of underground equipment, the transportation of spaceship materials, the movement of personnel, and the expenses. If there was any mistake in any step, what awaited Mao Yi Company would be liquidated by Steel Dome. But Chu Yao did it. Don't forget her identity, she was a monk. Naturally, monks had various methods to conceal these things. Even though it was still difficult to use the monkhood method, but she still overcame all the hardships and came to where she was today. For example, the various electronic devices displayed under the spaceship were carried by Chu Yao one by one in a storage bag. For example, in order to prevent Gang Qian from noticing the numerous personnel changes in the Mao Yi Company, Chu Yao spent a lot of effort to edit the memories of those Gang Qian employees. For example, before the base became self-sufficient in food production, Chu Yao had to find a way to find food every day, running day and night between the wasteland and the new capital. Needless to say, all these hardships. All of this for 2 words, go home. Leave Ling Yuan leave Qinghai and return to Feng Yuan. Although Feng Yuanxing may have completely changed under the management of Yalai Company, it is still good to give it a try. This is the hope of all the members of the Tianyan sect who gathered here now. I can't see your cultivation anymore. A voice came from beside my ear. Chu Yao turned around, and it was Gong Xiaoran who came in light clothes, and her current cultivation was at the middle stage of foundation establishment. Congratulations to Miss Chu on your promotion to Jindan. Xiaoran smiled and held her hand. It sounds a bit strange, neither ancient nor modern. Chu Yao scratched her head. Thank you, Xiaoran. Is Qing Yu there? Did the goods I ordered arrive earlier? He's in the third lab, and he seems to have had a fight with those old masters. Let's go today. I'll take you there.